Yeah, I guess. Okay, we are live.
Let's start. Yeah, sorry, Jeremy. Is like IT. You know what happens, right?
Yeah,
Something
it's all good.
Something on a shoot, right? Like as always.
I mean, we just wanted to make sure the audience is really on the edge of their seats. You know, it's like how you tell someone a dinner is at 7, but you don't feed them till 8, so they're really hungry and they really want the food. It's the same thing here.
Yeah, exactly.
But we are live now, so maybe start with example. Maybe you could tell something about yourself, introduce to people.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jeremy Kauffman. I'm the CEO of LBRY, that's LBRY.com, or now LBRY.tv, as well as LBRY.tech for the nerds out there. And I'll give this sort of fancy introduction and then we'll unpack it a little bit. LBRY is a blockchain-based open source protocol that facilitates the discovery, distribution, and purchase of digital content. That's a mouthful, but they say you have to get it in one sentence, and so that's the one sentence. If I'm explaining what LBRY is to my mother, I say, we want to make services like YouTube possible, but we don't want there to be a Google. So we don't want there to be a company that has the keys. We want to create an open system, a distributed system that has the same sort of interface, the same user experience. We don't want, YouTube as a user experience is pretty good. The problem is you have effectively a monopoly provider, that can change the rules on you at any time, and you have to have a system, where there's one set of rules for everyone, and this kind of leaves everyone unhappy. So that's what we're trying to do. This is not, unlike some other blockchain projects, this is far from theoretical. There's more than 1.5 million pieces of content on the network. There's dozens of super popular YouTubers with millions of subscribers. There's even some Hollywood videos on the network. Some people in this room may have a channel that they've put some content on. I'm not sure. I'm guessing Robin will tell you all about that. But that's LBRY, and that's what we're trying to do with it.
So maybe you could tell us something about what is behind the name of LBRY, where it come from.
I wish I probably need to invent a better story for this. So one of our constraints in naming the company was we wanted to have a very short name, a very small series of letters, and that's because LBRY is designed to be an addressable internet protocol. By this I mean compared to HTTP or FTP, they're URLs, right? So you write URLs with the LBRY protocol, and so we wanted to have a short series of letters so that to match other internet protocols. And that was the restriction we were working within. And the idea of the company is to create this public, open, anyone can search it, anyone can access it, store of information. That's what a LBRY is. And so definitely this project is trying to build a sort of 21st century LBRY, right? That's a library for the internet where anyone can contribute to it. It's open, it's free, that kind of thing. So it's not an acronym. We failed on that. We have tried creating a backronym, which is when you come up with an acronym after the fact to backfill. Backronym, but it's not one. So we liked LBRYs because they're a place of open information, and we wanted a short series of characters, and that's how we came up with the name.
So, what if someone uploads copyrighted content? Is it a problem for?
Well, to start by putting the question, I guess, back on you, what happens if someone uploads copyrighted content to HTTP, to the internet on the web? And so LBRY doesn't change the law, right? In most places in the world, uploading content that you do not have the rights to upload is against the law, or more specifically, uploading content that someone else has the copyright to. is against the law. That doesn't change in LBRY. A lot of the same enforcement mechanisms would be used. So the government or whatever agency is attempting to enforce issues around copyright, could attempt to look at who made this publish, who put it there, did they have the rights to it, that kind of thing. But yes, one difference with LBRY compared to, say, YouTube is that in the LBRY model, if you publish something from your computer, the keys to that publish are only on your computer. So we don't have the ability to delete or remove content that other people publish. So if we're told that something on the LBRY network is against the law, we register that and we put it in a publicly available database. And software that if people want to use LBRY in a legal fashion, they will subscribe to that list and database, which is what our software does by default.
What about media files which can be uploaded to LBRY? Is it only limited to video or music?
So LBRY can handle any kind of upload. From a user experience perspective, we focused a little bit more on video specifically, and then secondarily on audio and text. But from a technology perspective, you could distribute anything. So if you wanted to distribute CAD files, Excel spreadsheets, big data sets, genomic data, anything that's ultimately a stream of bits on the other end, which is all files, all movies, all audio, all text, as a technology LBRY can move it around.
Okay, we have first question from the viewers on YouTube.
All right.
Okay, so Pexing is saying, will LBRY get support for 360 VR videos?
Yeah, we would, my view is we would like to support anything and everything that we can. So LBRY, so I think that question is asking about when will our app support that? And I would say probably when someone listening to this makes a pull request that adds that feature. If we had thousands of users actively asking for it, we would probably prioritize it ourselves. There's a lot of content that could be improved. 360 videos is not at the top of our list internally, but one of the really cool parts about LBRY is it's all open source, it's all public, all the code behind it is public. Hundreds of people, including at least one person in this room, have contributed to LBRY already, and so it's really not that hard. Even someone with probably a intermediate level of knowledge about JavaScript could probably go about and add that to the LBRY browser, right? And we are also happy to pay bounties and tips and rewards for people who make useful contributions. If someone out there listening would like to add that, we would be happy to work with you and support you, but us as a company probably won't be adding a viewer for that in the immediate future.
Okay.
Just being honest though, I could have said it was coming when it wasn't. So,
we have another question. That will be a more interesting one. Minion is asking, what about live streaming, like this YouTube stream, but on LBRY?
Yes. So this the system was designed with this in mind, which is important. If you compare it to something like BitTorrent, which is another distributed system for sharing files, BitTorrent cannot support a live stream, so in order to publish something to BitTorrent, you have to have the complete file completed. LBRY was designed with this in mind. It's not something that we've fully implemented yet. This is something I would expect. I can't promise 360 VR in 2020. I would be very surprised if we don't have live streaming completed by the end of 2020, or at least fairly surprised. So I think live streaming will come. And it absolutely is something that was in our design considerations.
So maybe quite another question. More technical point of view. So, what programming language or languages, technologies were used to create a LBRY application?
Yeah, sure. I'll go over that. Although first I'll say, since I know that there are some, IT people in the room, people who are at the beginning or early stages of their education or potential career paths here. So one of the things I would say is that if you're a good programmer, language choices are pretty secondary. For example, even if we're hiring, I wouldn't be afraid to hire someone who had potentially never worked in a language before if I had evidence that that person was a strong programmer in other languages. So I'd say, it's best to make sure you're getting a sample of different types of languages, different programming styles as to, functional versus declarative versus whatever. In terms of what we use specifically, we use a variety of languages, C++ for our blockchain, Python for our SDK that ships with most of our apps and is also contains the data network implementation. We use JavaScript, HTML, CSS for most of our application front ends. We make use of Go in a lot of our some like internal tooling, as well as some other publicly available tools. And so those are the big four that we make use of. Technically, we have some PHP on our website. I think Go is a great language. So if you're just like looking for a language to pick up and learn something about, I think Go is a great one. Otherwise, your language choice, will be somewhat dictated by what you want to do. If you want to make a website, you're going to end up using JavaScript pretty much, at least at some point. Maybe you could use some other language that compiles to it, but it's still good to know how JavaScript works if what you're ultimately creating is JavaScript.
Yeah, sure. I see that some questions about ads were started. So maybe let's open that full set of topics about ads on the library.
Ads, yeah.
Yeah, could you tell us something about it? Could you tell us something about it?
Sure. Is this just to talk about advertising generally, or was there a more specific question coming?
Let's start the first one. How can creators earn money on the platform when there are no advertisements?
Yeah, so LBRY is not against advertisements. What we are pro-choice. So right now we don't have advertisements. That's basically because us/the community is supporting creators that are publishing to LBRY so strongly, and we can look at creators who have made thousands, tens of thousands of dollars by publishing to LBRY so far. But in terms of how advertisements will eventually be coming to LBRY, in fact, some tests on LBRY.tv will probably be going up this year. However, advertising will never be mandatory to watch on LBRY like it is on many other platforms. So our view is advertising should be a choice that the viewer has, right? And so I think the right way to think of content that's published so I guess I'll first start by introducing a little bit of a potential conceptual shift in terms of how we think about content being published to YouTube. So a lot of people would watch a video on YouTube and they would say, oh, well, that was free. And I would, if it had an advertisement, I would strongly disagree with this. If I'm getting your time, I think most people, if not everyone listening to this, would agree that their time is not worthless. Your time has some value. If I said, could I have 30 seconds or a minute of your day for the rest of your life, you would not give that to me for $0. You would charge a price for that. It turns out on YouTube that for most of the people listening to this, I'm guessing, YouTube probably values 30 seconds of your time as worth a fraction of a penny. And so you can do some of the math on that as to what is your time, what does YouTube actually think your time is worth on an hourly basis. You may be insulted, but that is what your time is being sold for. That is the market rate of your time. And so in our view, a better model would be that the creator is simply saying, and that is what the creator is saying as well. When they publish on YouTube and they're turning on ads, they're saying, I want a penny or half a penny or whatever per view. And these costs are typically expressed as CPMs or cost per thousands, or sometimes cost per millions. But CPM is cost per thousand. I don't know why they use M, probably for reasons of Roman numerals or whatever. But anyway, I think it's actually more interesting to express it as a pure basis because it makes it clear just how little your time is being valued when you watch an ad. So we will eventually be making this explicit. So if a creator wants a half a penny per video view, you will have the choice as to whether or not you want to watch an advertisement or spend half a penny.
So do you think LBRY will use, like for example, another Brave browser? So user can, for example, enable ads and earn LBC from it?
As to the specific currencies that this stuff will be transacted in, I mean, I would expect it would be LBRY tokens, but that's not something that we're taking a strong stance on. The core value of LBRY is in that discovery and distribution aspect. If people want to make payments in other tokens or other currencies, that's not necessarily something we're against. I think aspects of the Brave model are quite interesting and likely to be adopted by us as we continue to build out this stuff on our end. And so that the part there that I think is interesting is basically you're choosing what you disclose. So whether you want to tell advertisers your age and your gender and these things, those kinds of things will be up to you. Now, of course, there's no free lunch here. If people want, and I'm all for people having privacy on the internet. If they want it, I choose to make choices myself that give me more privacy. LBRY supports people making those choices, but there will be a cost. Okay, like you're not going to be able to both get free content and not tell advertisers anything about you. So if you want to be private with your information, which is something that I totally respect and LBRY will respect, there will be a cost to that, right? If an advertiser is not going to pay as much to show, if I'm trying to sell, peanuts in Massachusetts in the United States, I'm going to pay a lot more to show an ad to someone I know likes peanuts that lives in Massachusetts than to show an ad to someone that I know literally nothing about. So if people choose to be more private in their information, they're definitely not going to, seeing ads will not, advertisers will not pay as much money to show content to those people. And that money is what ultimately drives a lot of content creation.
Right, well, I see we got another question from chat. It's about roadmap. So what are the next year's goals in the updated roadmap?
So I actually have a ticket to update our roadmap, which is at LBRY.com/roadmap. So if you want to see what we planned in 2019, we hit a significant majority of these. We did not hit all of them, and some of the ones that we hit did come in late. Those of you, if you've worked in technical fields, you may have seen this before, that people do not always meet their deadlines. But I think we did a pretty good job. Almost everything that was on the list got done. And a lot of them did get done exactly on time. The 2020 roadmap will probably be made public at the end of this year, so I've not finished it yet. But most likely, some of the things that will be on it, we've already talked about. I would like streaming to be on there. More things with advertising will be on there. iOS, I think 2020 will probably be the year we finally make it onto iOS, pretty much the only platform we are not on currently. So we have apps for every operating system, we have apps for the web, and we have apps for Android. We do not have an iOS app. And then, the biggest thing though will be continuing to grow. So right now we have tens of thousands of people using LBRY on a daily or near daily basis, and we need to get that to at least hundreds of thousands. Really, we need to get it to millions. I'd like to, it'd be awesome if we had 1 million people using LBRY by the end of next year.
I have another question. When LBC value goes up, will you change the LBC amount for YouTube Sync LBRY?
If we do adjust the compensation that we offer to creators based off the price of the token, I have an amount of ignorance about our price moves that would probably shock you. People think that because I'm a blockchain CEO, I have some magic insight. I do not. I don't understand why our price does what it does. Don't understand why it goes up, when it goes up. I at one point tried to do an analysis of this, like looking at when our coin moved, like deviating from market trends, right? So you say like, well, what was the overall non-Bitcoin or non-Bitcoin and Ethereum market trends on a date? When did we deviate most from that date? And I can't figure it out. I mean, we had a big one just the other day. I have no idea who that was. I have no idea why they did it. So, and I expect my ignorance will remain into the future. So I can't really answer that question. I tend to focus on the metrics that I and we do have the ability to control. So we focus on metrics like how many people are watching videos, how much content is available, how long do people watch content for, how often do they come back, and all of these metrics have been heading in a positive direction. Basically for the entirety of this year, but particularly in the last 2 months, some of these look like they're really turning a corner.
I have another interesting question. That is from Retro RGB. Are there any updates about adding LBC to Ledger?
Isn't it on? Which one is the Ledger? I thought we were on. Maybe I'm thinking of a different device. Ledger may be the one where there's a pull request for it, and they just need to merge it. I don't know. Yeah, actually, I did just find it. So we have a pull request. We added. Looks like we proposed support to Ledger in October 12th, 2018. All someone at their company needs to do is click a single button, and support on Ledger will be there. So what I would recommend that you do is you go onto that pull request, or even better, you go onto Twitter and you say, "Hey Ledger, why won't you merge this?" I just linked it in chat if anyone else wants to come at them. But Ledger support could be there literally with one click of a button from anyone on the Ledger team. And it does seem pretty poor of them to just leave this open for a year and not even say anything about it. I can tell you we manage our pull requests far more promptly than this at LBRY. So I would say shame on Ledger for leaving this open for a year and not saying anything about it, but we can't really do anything else.
Funny thing is that me and Tom are working on it, and the Ledger team is started testing Ledger Live.
Okay, all right, then I will walk back my criticism if they're actively working on it. But maybe make some comment or something as such. I think having just these old open pull requests is a bad practice.
Okay, maybe another question. I mean, because how many users are currently using the platform?
Yeah, so what's funny is there are 2 pull requests on Ledger open. So someone else from our community also tried to do it. I actually said this earlier. So in a given week, right now we see about it's in the mid tens of thousands. So like 30, 40, 50,000 people will use LBRY in a week. But not all of those people are necessarily transacting in the currency. Some people just watch content for free.
Is your platform open source? Someone use that as a component of other system?
Yes. I mean, so everything we do is open source, and that's everything. I'll come back to the open source nature of it, but I realized that I should have talked a little bit earlier about some of the why this stuff matters, that it's an open protocol, because it really changes our experience. The closest analogy, although it's not a perfect one, I would make is email versus Facebook or YouTube. So when you use Facebook or YouTube, you're creating an account with them and you're very much trapped in that ecosystem. You can get your content out, but it's hard. And once you've gotten out, you can no longer interact with those within. Compare this to email. If you're on Gmail and I'm on Gmail and I want to stop using Gmail, I can move over to Outlook or Hotmail or self-host my mail or use the mail of my ISP. And it's a quick update. Maybe you have to update your address book if my address changes, but our communication largely continues unimpeded. If I want to keep my old emails, I just put them into my new mail system. It all generally just works. This is the world that we want for digital content distribution. So if you publish something, that publish remains with you. Whether people access it on LBRY TV or anything else, you're never locked into one system. And so the same thing is true here. Content published on LBRY TV is accessible by any library app, and anyone can make a library app. And people can make library apps for different purposes, and some people have, right? So there are library apps that are more focused on the music experience as opposed to the video experience. And so that's a really important distinction from the alternatives, which is you build a service and you use a service and then you're trapped in it. And this is what companies do. They build a service, they make it great. Once they feel that they've trapped their users, they make it less great, right? And this is what every company does. And this is like literally, you can see their investment plans. This is what they say they're going to do. They tell their investors, they say, we're going to make the service, we're going to corner the market, and then we're going to dick people over. They don't usually use the phrase dick people over, but that is basically what they say they're going to do. So our model with LBRY is to make that fundamentally impossible. So everything that we do is open source. If I ever turn into an evil person or I'm replaced by an evil person, no one is trapped. The code can be forked. People can, if someone wanted to make a LBRY TV 2 with the same interface, the same functionality, you could have it up and running inside of a day, right? So I think that's a really big and important distinction from the status quo. In terms of where all of our source code is, it's all available on our GitHub, github.com/LBRYIO. Also, LBRY.tech has links to all of it, and all of our code is MIT licensed, which is an extremely permissive open source license.
I have one more question. What makes LBRY different platforms that?
Yeah, so I'm not here are some platforms that are censorship free. The web itself and domain names, BitTorrent, if you can, although aggregation and discovery of BitTorrent is very censored. There's no website that is uncensored. You cannot make one. Okay, so if there's a platform and the only way you can access it is by typing an address in your browser, it is not censorship resistant. So they're all lying, okay? Because every website can be censored. Every website has to respond to requests from states around the world to block content. And every government in the world says that there are things that people shouldn't look at. And so websites are always going to have to honor those. Now, the BitTorrent network, as an example, is pretty censorship resistant. If you have a magnet link or an entry point into the BitTorrent network, governments have not generally been successful at censoring content on the BitTorrent network. Governments have not generally been successful at censoring entire domains or entire websites if those websites really want to remain up. But governments have been very successful at censoring content on specific websites. I think they've been very, very successful at that. So a lot of these platforms that claim to be censorship resistant are just websites, and so you should be very skeptical of them. In our case, we have a website, but that website is sort of the Coinbase equivalent for Bitcoin. So Coinbase is a very censor-prone version of Bitcoin. If you run a full Bitcoin node, it's very censorship resistant. So you can use our software in both ways. You can use the web version, which is like using Coinbase, and has the same problems that I just outlined, but is very user-friendly. I'm not like, we're very for being user-friendly. I use Coinbase. I'm not knocking Coinbase here when I'm saying this. But if I want to feel safe with my Bitcoin, I don't leave it on Coinbase. I use Coinbase because it's a convenient UI. So same thing with LBRY. You use LBRY TV if you want the convenient UI. If you want to really be censorship resistant, you have to run the software yourself on your local machine.
Got a really interesting question from Lav Raiders from chat about user data. It goes, will LBRY publisher see analytics on who watches your videos if there will be user data available? So where that data going to be stored?
Yeah, so here's how we do this right now. And I talked earlier about how these privacy trade-offs and this kind of thing. So when you use LBRY, if you create a LBRY.tv account, you will be sharing information with us. You don't have to create a LBRY.tv account. So if you want to use LBRY fully privately and fully anonymously, you can download our software. You can uncheck share data, which is it's not hidden. It's very prominent in settings, If you uncheck that, we now know nothing about how you use the system. No data is sent to us about your usage. We don't know what you viewed. We don't know what you looked at. If you create a LBRY TV account or you optionally choose to share data with us, we do aggregate and use that data so that we can report about how many views pieces of content are getting, how many subscribers channels have, this kind of thing. So we really like it if people share data with us because creators want to know these things. What we will probably end up doing eventually is give like estimated statistics. So if we see a lot of people opting out, or we can attempt to collect data on how many people are sharing versus not sharing, and then you would end up doing techniques like, well, the people who shared data with us, we know this content got 50,000 views, and we think that, only half of people are sharing with us, so like the estimated views are 100,000. But there will be no way to get perfect information in a decentralized network. There's just no way to get perfect information. So what we will do is collect people who choose to share information with us, which we really appreciate. We will aggregate and share with creators in a private fashion. But we will not have perfect information, and people who want to opt out of information sharing with us are able to do so.
One more question from Laxit. How to take part in the LBRY Swarm program? And what's the requirements to become a hive?
So this program is changing a little bit, but you can certainly learn about it. So we have a community program where people are able to come in and get involved and make contributions to LBRY. That can be through starting a club, performing translations, writing code, any number of various things. You could end up moderating our chat. There's just so many opportunities. The best way to come in and get involved is probably just to come into our chat directly, which you can join from chat.libry.com. There is also an intro document to the Swarm program that's available at libry.com/swarm.
Question from LBRY Social. What on and off ramps could be available in the future platform?
Yeah, so this is a nightmare, and basically governments around the world are very threatened by cryptocurrencies because they like to control the financial lives of their citizens, and cryptocurrencies are very threatening to them. So most countries in Europe and the United States are attempting to quell usage of cryptocurrencies, largely through, at least in the U.S., I can't speak as much to Europe. In the U.S., it's largely done through KYC AML laws, so that's Know Your Customer, anti-money laundering laws. So it is for me to give you $10 for $10 worth of LBRY, or vice versa, for me to give you $10 worth of LBRY for $10, I cannot begin to explain how much of an absolute regulatory and compliance nightmare this is. It is set up to make it impossible. For us to do it ourselves as a company, we've received estimates of more money that we've spent ever. So every dollar we've ever spent as a company would not be sufficient for me to sell you legally, just a single transaction of $10. It would not be enough money. So that is why we're stuck using third-party providers. I mean, you can look at even the Brave browser does not do this. And they ship you off to a third-party company. One in Israel, not one in the US. And they say, use this company to switch between currencies. So we may use that company as well. We are looking at other solutions. We have received some contradictory legal advice, so it may be possible for us to do it for a cheaper price if we do extremely small amounts or stay within other guidelines. So I can promise you that this is something that we are looking at and working on. We think it's a real shame that the governments make it this as hard to do as they do, though.
About the COPPA, how and why to the LBRY?
Yes. So I was just I have to be very clear at the beginning of this answer that my understanding of this stuff is somewhat preliminary. So this was a new ruling. So a lot of this stuff is new. So I want to first say that any answer I'm about to give here is preliminary and may change. But my current understanding of this situation is that what specifically got Google in trouble is the fact that they want to build profiles of people under 13. So what I think we're going to do, so long as this legal understanding is correct, I mean, we already tell you have to be over 13 to use LBRY. So as long as we make sure that we're doing our best to actively not collect data on people under 13, which we're already doing. I have no reason to believe we have data on anyone under 13. If we do that and make sure that we're checking those boxes there, then I believe that the COPA stuff that YouTube is pushing onto creators will not apply to us. YouTube has to push that stuff on creators because Google wants to collect profiles, collect information on people under 13. We have no desire to do that. So as long as we don't do that, we should be on the right side of that line. So if you're affected by that stuff, I would strongly encourage you to come check out LBRY.
So talking about LBRY, how many people are working on the LBRY network?
So working on the LBRY network directly, there are 7 people working on the network directly. Then we have a couple of additional people working on applications, so that to differentiate, like, technically speaking, the applications aren't the network. You're working on a user interface. So we have 7 people working on the network. That's the blockchain and the data network layers. And then we have two people working on applications, and we have, depending on how you count it out, 1 to 2 people working on like other things, essentially like DevOps, internal tooling, email communications, like the technical side of that. And then we have staff that are not on the technical team.
Another question is not very interested. Can a user upload a video without user? Because you told us we're not your and so on. So possible to upload a video without need of register?
Oh yeah, of course. Yes, that's fundamental to the system. Yeah. So creating an account with us and sharing data with us, that is all totally optional. So the benefit of doing that is, 1, we like you, but more importantly, you get free stuff from us. So if you create an account and you share information from us, you'll be able to earn $5 to $10, maybe more, worth of cryptocurrency. You'll be able to get email reminders. There's some other benefits to having an account, but it's not mandatory. If you download LBRY, turn off tracking, get some cryptocurrency from an exchange or a friend, or you could even create an account and then send it to your unknown account. You can publish completely anonymously, and we won't know that you published. We won't know your IP address. We won't know anything about you. So if someone wants to publish and use the LBRY network anonymously, that's completely possible.
Okay, so another question is about LBC. So what's the use of LBC credits, cryptocurrency in the app?
Yeah, so I'll go through them in order of, like, let's say the hardness of the requisite, like how much the requisite how much it's absolutely necessary, which is not going to necessarily be how much people actually do this. So the reason the hardest requirement to have LBC is you do need a little bit to publish. If you want to make something available on the network, you have to issue a blockchain transaction. Now, right now, that's going to cost you less than a penny. So I'm not talking about a significant amount of money, but it's not completely free. The other reasons that you would use it is you might use it to tip or support a creator. You might use it to pay for a piece of content if that content has a price. And then there's also a system of we call it staking or supporting other content. And so another usage of LBC is it helps find which content is legitimate and desirable and which content is not. So it affects the way that content performs on the network itself in terms of searching and discovery.
We got a nice question from the chat.
All right.
Yeah, we got to change it a bit. I mean, Arthur just told us to change it a bit. I mean, it's a question about adult content. Adult content. So, do you have any adult content on the platform?
Yeah, there is adult content on the platform. Our policy on this stuff. So let's we've kind of said LBRY is this place that's very difficult to censor. Anyone can publish anything anonymously, that kind of thing. So that content is going to be there. There is pornographic content on the network. Our attitude with this is that the default experience should be pretty clean and safe, and people should have to opt in and say they want to see things that are adult or objectionable, that kind of thing. So if that is the kind of content that you're looking for, you can find it on LBRY. If you just run LBRY and load LBRY TV, you're not going to see that stuff. But if you go in and say, I'm comfortable seeing adult and mature content, you can find it.
That was the first part of the question. So it's the context only. So the second part is while using such a content, watching it, does LBRY know something about it, what I'm watching?
Only if you're sharing information with us, which is a setting, then we do track what content is getting watched. Same as YouTube or other services do. If you uncheck that box, we do not know what you're watching. And wait, I also want to be clear, like that came off like we know what you want. Like no one's looking at this stuff, right? Like I'm not like pulling up. No, and that would be against our company directors. Like the only time that data ever gets accessed is it gets accessed in aggregate, right? So we want to be able to say this content got viewed 15,000 times. We're not. No one is like going in and like looking at what you're watching and that kind of thing. That is not happening. Yeah.
How long it took to create the platform?
Have we created it yet? Was it created when it launched? This is to some extent a sort of a ship of Theseus philosophical question. When is software ever done? When was it finished? It's never. By the way, I've had a shockingly frustrating conversation with a government official about this at one point. Like, when is LBRY done? Like, well, I don't know. When is Gmail done? Were more people working on Gmail when it was in beta or out of beta? Like, more people are probably working on Gmail now than when it was in beta. So was Gmail not done when it came out of beta? When LBRY launched, you could publish to the blockchain, you could download content. There was no graphical interface. There were no channels. There were no tags. There were a variety of things. But you could access a piece of content. Was it done then? It's not done now in the sense that we continue to add more features and develop it. I don't know. I'm going to give a non-answer to this question. I think that everything is there on LBRY that you can have a comparable or better experience to YouTube. I think that's true today. So
if LBRY wouldn't be as successful as planned, how long will you work on it, even if it won't make any profit?
As long as there's a community of people that want to keep working on it, I expect that to continue to happen. Although, financially, we're not too concerned about our future, and all of our trends are going in a positive direction. So, I think we are well on track to being successful. However, I think that there's a lot of people who care about LBRY regardless, and I think a number of those people would continue to contribute regardless.
There is very good question about LBRY and pierce through Great Wall of China.
Yeah. Well, we have a LBRY community group, a LBRY hive in China. So it's evidently making it to them. LBRY traffic can. A lot of it already looks like standard internet traffic. Some of it doesn't. There probably are techniques that China could use to filter it out at a relatively high level, but then you can then go and play sort of games of cat and mouse and evolve your techniques. Right now, I think in China you would have no problem accessing it. And then if China started to do something about that, we would have to play some games with them. But I think that it is ultimately possible and very difficult to stop. I mean, you basically, the way the LBRY network is designed, like as long as I can make an encrypted request over UDP or TCP to an arbitrary IP address and port, you're going to be able to interact with the network. And so like, it's not going to be nearly as easy to block as like a website or something like that.
Nice question from Library Social. Are there any plans to team up with any other companies for a joint project?
One that I can't really talk about, and not too many others besides that one. But we're always interested in partnership deals or that kind of thing. So if there's a specific company or group you're thinking that we should work with, please let me know. I'm gonna have to call this. I'm gonna have to call this pretty soon. So maybe like one or two more questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
We got another question from chat. I will skip that before. It's from John Blanton. Is LBRY going to try and promote LBRY to those that are going to be affected by COPPA?
So maybe I gave that very. I'm sure my lawyers wouldn't have even liked me giving the answer I gave earlier. So like, we need to make sure that we've got our legal understanding correct before we promote on that access. If my current understanding is correct, then I think we will do some promotions around this. But I need to verify that that is correct.
Are there plans to release a macOS Press Sierra version?
Does LBRY not work on macOS Sierra? I'm just learning this in real time. Yes, we wanted to work on all versions of macOS. I'm not a Mac guy. Is Sierra the latest macOS?
No.
Oh, if it's like a particularly old macOS, then probably not.
So Sierra is quite old.
Yeah, probably not then. But I would say if a community member wanted to do it, we would adopt it. I'm guessing that there's some dependency or something that one of our apps has that just like doesn't go back that far back, and so that dependency would have to be fixed. Like, I'm sure it was not like we weren't like screw the Sierra users or something. It was most likely just like our tooling, some tool choice that we made doesn't support that far back. So I would say that's unlikely to be something that we would address ourselves.
Yeah, so let's be precise, because the old is so relative term. So the question was lower than 0.12.6.
Is that a year-based versioning system? So is that an OS that came out in June 2012? Okay. I'm sorry, as you can tell, I'm just not familiar with Mac versions off the top of my head. I mainly run Linux, and then I run Windows occasionally, and I just basically never run Mac. So I'm not sure if there's, we do look at the analytics of our users. So if there's a substantial amount of people on that operating system, we would want to support it. But it sounds like it's an older one, so I'm guessing that that's not at the front of our list.
I just came out in.
Okay. All right, maybe one more question, if there is one.
Yeah, let's extend a bit question about content, because we're talking about video content. And so what kind of content else? I mean, let's extend that, and any other content you can share LBRY.
Yeah, so the key distinction in terms of what LBRY is good at is whether the data is, we use the term static. And so by that I mean, is it the same for two different people? So Facebook sends you data, but no two users of Facebook see the same view. Every view is customized and tailored. Images on Facebook, that's static. If I see a Facebook post from Roman and you see a Facebook post from Roman, we see the same image. So the image is static, the things surrounding the image are not. LBRY is designed for static content. So anything that's static, videos are the same for two people, images are the same for two people, Excel spreadsheets are the same for two people. We think LBRY can be a fundamentally better way of distributing those things. Like, when I say fundamentally better, I mean like it can actually use less electricity, less network bandwidth, or at least less expensive network bandwidth where you're going far distances. Obviously, if you're moving a gigabyte, you have to move a gigabyte one way or another. But so yeah, I mean, we think LBRY is designed for that use case. I think it's absolutely possible that LBRY serve a significant portion of internet traffic in the future, yeah, if what we've built can do what we think it can. Certainly the amount of traffic on LBRY, it's been growing substantially. It's doubled multiple times this year. So the trends are in a positive direction.
What about games? What
yeah.
about games?
Sorry?
What about games? Is it capable of?
Sure. Games, as long as it's a game, and as far as I know, games still work this way, where it's two people who buy the same game get the same set of files that are running on their computer. As long as that's true, then LBRY can be good for distributing it.
We got another question from chat.
Okay, this is the last one though. So
the last one.
Yeah.
That is challenging. That is challenging. Okay, so if I understand the concept, when I use LBRY is downloading content to my PC. Is it possible that someone will upload a virus and I can download it via LBRY?
So the same techniques that we use for filtering illegal content, we also use for filtering malicious content. So we put it on a blacklist, and software by default is configured to subscribe to our list. So if that happens, it can be reported and flagged. In the only way that it could happen, it's not going to happen by clicking play on a video. So that absolutely can't happen. So you never have to be worried that if I click play on a video, that you're going to somehow get a virus or your computer's going to be compromised. So if it's a video or an image or anything that's showing up in the viewer, you're safe. If someone is saying, click the download button and then double click this, I would be careful, right? Because someone can distribute an executable through LBRY, and we can't. If someone tells us that an executable contains a virus, we will put it on the blacklist. That has to happen to someone before we notice. And by the way, I also want to be clear, as far as I know, that has never happened. But yeah, if you're going to download and run random executables, just as you would on the internet at large, be careful and probably don't do that. If you're going to click play on a video, you're completely safe. Actually, Roman, I have time for one more question. If that question is specifically, Jeremy, do you have a reward code for anyone listening to this?
Yeah, that's his first question, and let's extend that a bit. Will LBRY like to cooperate with Reds to do something really?
Sure. Yeah. Although that wasn't the question that I said you could ask. I'm happy to talk about that, and you can talk to me directly, or you can talk to Roman, or Roman knows Julie from our team. But yeah, we're definitely interested in that kind of thing. I'll now pretend that the question that I said could be asked was asked. Yes, Roman, I do have a reward code for everyone listening. I'm so glad that you asked. The reward code is F44RED is rad. And so anyone who enters that can get 50 LBC for free. And so just download any of our apps or sign in on LBRY.tv. So that's for anyone listening. You can enter that code and get 50 LBC for free. I will say to anyone listening, just if you found this interesting and you haven't used LBRY yet, please check it out. You can download that full app from LBRY.com. You can use the Coinbase version on LBRY.tv. If you're technical and you want to get involved on that side, go to LBRY.tech. If you're not technical and you want to get involved, or if you're technical, come on to chat.LBRY.com and talk to us a little bit. There's lots of opportunity to get involved. We're trying to build, a 21st century library. Anyone can put something in it. Anyone else can find it. We think that's a really cool idea. This sort of permissionless publishing that can't be interfered with, that's shared, that's open, that's free. If that sounds cool to you, come and hang out with us. There's a lot of cool people that are a part of it.
Jeremy, let me thank you that you participated. We were a special guest in F44RED interview, and so generous, let's say, in the end. And thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for supporting.
Thank you. And that was very well done and a lot of great questions. Have a good day, everyone.
Yeah, see ya.
So thank you all guys for watching the live stream. The copy
F4A4 Red
Red
channel.
channel and also library.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye.